In this video, I'm going to turn a Guntank into some kind of AdMech monstrosity that I will be giving away at the end of this video so you could own what I make. Welcome back to Lizard of Doom. I am Max, and this is another Gundam Kitbash. I put it to you guys whether you wanted to see a Tzeentch Demon Prince, having already seen a Nurgle Demon Prince Gundam, or whether you want to see an AdMech conversion, and you chose AdMech. So here we are. My idea for this one is using the Guntank because of the tracks. This is very similar to the Kataphrons, and also the destroyers of things like big plasma guns, and the breachers have things like a melee hand. These are all things that I like the sound of. So I'm going to have a little look at what I can do making the Guntank look like a giant Kataphron. But first, no sponsor on this video this week, so I guess I'll do it myself. This is the new Lizard of Doom merch. I have got some lovely embroidered logo merch for you. There's the hoodie, the hat, the patch, and the t-shirt. And I've also got a new line designed by the lovely Lydia, my partner, which is Lydia's Legendarium. This is a selection of mythical beast themed cute little embroideries on these t-shirts. Very smart, as you can see, quite classy, and they are available now at lizardofdoom.com. So go and check that out, and let's get into the video. This is a Guntank. It only cost me £9. That is hella cheap for any kind of plastic miniature, especially of this scale. It is quite large. This thing was relatively easy, if not time consuming to put together. There are a lot of different bits. The bit I was most excited for was the tracks. This is the integral part to me in making it look like an AdMech thing. The way it would look like those smaller troops I showed you earlier was going to be the basis of this entire build. And once I put it all together, you get a little something like this. Pretty damn cool tank humanoid miniature. This thing is 1/44 scale. You can see the little cockpit up there would fit a human, so that is how big a human is compared to this thing in the Gundam universe. But it was looking very Gundam and not enough Warhammer. These big guns were cool, but I don't think I'll be keeping them. I think big weapons on the arms are going to be more Warhammer than those long finger guns on the shoulders. So I rifled through my bits box. Now this is the only bits collection that didn't fit in the bits box I made recently on the channel. It is all my vehicle bits. And if you think that this is it in this box, you are sorely mistaken. There is another Quality Street tin full to the brim of bits. I've made a couple of knights on this channel. I've made various tanks in my time, Space Marine aircraft, all bits and bobs that I'll be drawing from for this boy. Time to take him apart and decide on a few bits and bobs to attach to him, rather than his very Gundam appendages now. I would start, however, with the chest piece. This was where I was going to make the main modifications to this dude. The front is coming off completely because I'll be cutting this down. The front is very iconically Gundam chest, and I'll be changing that out completely. You can see it's completely gone, not a trace left. I've cut it entirely off. And I'll be putting some innards inside using the bottom of a cockpit from a Space Marine aircraft. That fits strangely well in there, and I'll be using other bits to hide the joints and gaps. That needs a bit of trimming down, but once it is trimmed down, it'll look a little something like these. See, it fits very nicely, and I've managed to get the back on too. Very, very good. Now all it needs is something on the front. This back of a seat from an Imperial Knight fits perfectly in there for some reason. I don't know why, but it does. It fits perfectly in there. So this will be where my Servitor is going in this extreme makeover. He will be wired into the main frame from the very chest of this thing. A little bit more of that cockpit. This is the top of the seat flipped upside down just to cover the joins at the bottom there, and make it look a little bit more complete and a little bit more detailed. It's a little bit fiddly to get to stay in place, and I decided after this to definitely just use super glue when gluing Warhammer bits to Gundam bits, because the two plastics don't mix great together, and there are different types of plastics included in a Gundam kit. So super glue all the way. Next, I'm going to be using this casing of a gun, maybe? If you know what the kit this is from, let me know. It's some random tank, I think. So first of all, I'll be scraping this detail off, making it nice and flat, because I'm going to be cutting this in two. This is going to be the casing covering the joins on the right and left side of the central body bit I have just built. This will cover those gaps nicely and make it look like more AdMech armour. Just need to saw it in half now carefully and make sure each side is equal. A little scrape and a glue on, and there we go. Covers the edges quite well. Yeah, I'm not even going to question that, that's pretty good. Now time to handle this jetpack. I'm not opposed to having a jetpack on him, but these thrusters are not Warhammer enough. However, these ones are off a Space Marine aircraft, and with just a little bit of clipping and scraping, they're not too far off the size they need to be to go on the bottom of this jetpack. However, the bit where they met in the middle was annoying, and I had to keep filing them down, because just when I thought I'd get them in place, they would ping back off. Urgh! After that, I decided to make the shoulder kind of receptacles for those guns into missile launchers. So I trimmed down some larger missiles and used some Imperial Knight armor as flaps on top of these for like a little launching platform for these missiles. I didn't like how it sat now, it kind of looked like it was drooping down out the hole. So I would do a little bit of work to then point that missile up a little bit more, erect it a little bit more if you will. Left arm, I decided to take the gun off and replace it with an Imperial Knight fist. This thing now has a power fist and the wrist is surprisingly the same size. So a little bit of glue, not a lot of work needed here. I did just take a bit off the top of the fist to go on the arm. A nice simple fisting, just like your mum likes. The other arm was incredibly easy as well. I used a little bit of girder from some random kit in here and made a joint to attach this giant plasma gun from an Imperial Knight. Even the pistons from this kit would fit as well. This arm was just the right girth to be able to stick those in there and have them attached to the arm very, very nicely and look like it was meant to be there. A little bit of help lifting up the weight of the front of that barrel. Next, it's Servitor time. This is some grim corpse guy from one of the Flesh Eater Courts kits. He's a back decoration for one of the larger ghouls. However, he will now be a Servitor. A little bit of trimming, a little bit of clipping, a little bit of scraping, and I'll fit him in that front seat that I've prepared for him. Just have to flatten down the back a little bit, but you can see kind of what I am getting at. I will wire him in a little bit in the future, but for now, he doesn't look out of place there. I just need to build up a little bit around him to make it look like it's a cabin for him. But those keen-eyed amongst you will see the head is made of an Imperial Knight's head, with one of the helmet's lower halves cut off for the back plate, and a strange looking helmet for the front plate. I chose this helmet because it was the weirdest looking and less knight looking, more machine-y, and I used an Adeptus Mechanicus logo to fill that circle on top of the head. Next, the backplate. This is a spare backplate from the Knight Valiant kit. It comes with two for some reason, and it perfectly fit in that gap between the tracks. An easy way to add Warhammer-esque detail to an otherwise very bland area on this model. I did a computer screen at the bottom there to look like a terminal an infantry-sized miniature would be able to use and log into this beast and give it commands. Some reclaimed exhaust pipes would join it later, but not much more needed for that. I had a look at the top half now and decided he would need shoulder pads too in the future. That's very Warhammer, but for now I'll be keeping going with the bottom half of this tank humanoid construction and putting a little Mechanicus crotch flap from a knight on the front there. It fit perfectly and it was exactly the right size, so why would I not put it there? Shoulder pads. I got these other kind of gun casings, whatever these are, from another tank kit, and these bits of chain from a War Dog crotch flap. This was going to be glued on the back there to fill those little gaps and make it look like something mechanical was happening behind there. Some kind of greebly to make it look like it's a little bit more complex than just a shoulder pad. Now this might be very simple, but I think it is quite effective. Once they were on, but not fully in position yet, the shoulders can slide around a bit, I decided to wire in my Servitor. You can see bits of pipe and stuff and this electrical cable going to and from him, and then I would seal him in a little cockpit with another bit of Imperial Knight armour. This round piece, I believe from an arm maybe, is perfect to have him poking up out of the top there. He looks like he is surveying the battlefield now for this Gundam AdMech beast. and he is commanding this machine. With this pretty much done, a few extra gubbins on, and I just needed to sort out the base. This is a spare piece of MDF from another project that I was working on in the background, and it is 130mm round. That is the exact size base of a dune crawler. So if anyone was thinking of this as a counts as, maybe it's a counts as dune crawler. Now we are halfway through the video. It is the obligatory reminder to subscribe for more of this stuff. And also, I want to talk about commodities when painting and building miniatures like this. Time is a large commodity you need for this. A Gundam conversion video normally takes me 2 weeks rather than my 1 week turnaround, and this was no different. The only difference, actually there was a difference, the only difference was that this is the summer holidays and I am the father of a 5-year-old boy, so I do not have as much time as I would like to get into this, which means that I had to make smart and quick decisions with the paint jobs, cutting a few corners and just making it easier to overall paint, but by no means rushing and speed painting it, just making it a fast but solid paint job. After I'd primed them in this dark brown colour, it was time to work fast and work up from this to create a nice metallic effect all over, which would be the basis of this paint job. Le Sponge is back, and he got himself dirty with some dark silver from Pro Acryl. This was a little bit of a ball to get around these tracks. Luckily I hadn't glued them on, so I just popped them off. I know eagle-eyed Gundam fans, one is currently backwards, but I do sort that out by the end of the video. The whole thing covered in this spongy, erratic, messy manner makes it look like nice eroded metal, and that is dirt and rust built up in the crevices. To add a little difference, however, I used Pro Acryl Copper to pick out some piping all around this guy. After that I did the trim also on all of this fantastical armour. Copper trim is a very nice way to make it look a little more AdMech than Space Marines. After that I dry brushed Pro Acryl a light silver all over both of these areas just to pick out the edges and give it some nice shiny highlights as if it had worn on the edges and things had polished it and chipped it as it was going about its day-to-day business roaming the surfaces of Mars. After this I would then paint the panels. I was trying to stick to a similar colour scheme to the Kataphrons and using kind of a bone colour up on the under half of this tank, using Xandri dust in 2 thin coats just in the centre of all the panels, leaving all the metal exposed in the dirty crevices and the shiny edges, making this paint look old and that it had chipped off. I then used Ushabti bone glazing up towards the top edges of all these panels just to give it a slight highlight. Like I said, I'm moving fast and this was a very quick way to do a lot of highlighting. I would then do the same with the red, moving from Vallejo red in 2 thin coats again in the centre of all the panels I wanted to be red, up to Vermilion with a glaze, building and making smaller areas towards the top edges of all the panels. This is a very nice bright AdMech-y colour, and I'll be bringing it back down with some weathering later on. This is just the final highlights along the top edges of those panels, bringing them out a little bit. There's going to be a lot of grime and stuff on here later, so I'm not even sure that big highlights will be that noticeable. That is the way when you paint grimdark. Iron Arc Flesh for the base of the Servitor, then a Drakenhof Nightshade wash, and just bringing it back again with the highlight of Iron Arc Flesh. Simple, corpsey, but not zombie. The blue gives it kind of a corpsey feel, but if it were green or purpley, that would feel more zombie. And with his bits and bobs like his teeth and his eye painted, one Servitor. Next is all of the water slide decals. I broke out some of the old Imperial Knight Mechanicus transfers. They were very useful in this build, and I wouldn't have been able to make it look so official without them. After they'd set on there, I gave the whole miniature a coat of varnish and got to my grey, it says panel liner, but it is just streaking grime. This is a lovely way to add dirt to the miniature without changing the colour too much. I find your standard streaking grime is very browny greeny, and that does interact with the colours underneath and make them those tones, whereas this grey was going to just dull it down, kind of desaturate it all and leave a grimy filter over the top of everything. I'd slap it on, it has been thinned a bit, and then I would pull it back off with white spirit on a sponge. This again creates that random texture that you don't really get if you were to use like a cotton bud or something. It would be more uniform, you know. You can't get the random effect without doing it randomly. After that, I decided to work on the base while this dried. I used some of the Iron Earth texture paint from Citadel, and I was hoping for a good effect. I always love watching this dry, but unfortunately, I don't know if it was the primer I'd used or the fact it was an MDF base, but it didn't dry perfectly. I've still time-lapsed it though, because I know it is satisfying to watch, so here comes that for you all after I've cleaned it with a cheeky little finger. Super satisfying to watch it crack. It dried like the first bit immediately, then the thicker bits took a longer time to dry, and I find when you put it on thicker it cracks more, but I wasn't happy with this. So I used some Vallejo pigment. This dark red ochre is like the perfect colour and texture for a Martian surface. I thought if I could make the base look like this powder, then that would be great. So what I did was I worked it on there with a large makeup brush, putting down a piece of folded paper so I can scoop it easily back into the bottle afterwards, because this stuff is hella messy. And then what I would do after that is do a coat of the varnish just to seal it on there. But unfortunately, when you put varnish over pigment powder, quite a lot of it just disappears. It just goes away. So what I did was work with the varnish. After I'd done this first one, you can see it's quite orange. I'd accidentally knocked some of the texture paint off, but hopefully I would cover this with more orange. So this is after the first varnish. The varnish is still a little bit uncured, so I'd put a little bit more on and work that into the uncured varnish. I would repeat this process several times, building up and building up, because I like the fine texture of this powder. It looks a little bit nicer than sand because it is finer, and that makes more sense at this scale. It's not perfect, however. I thought I'd give it a little highlight with some Jokero orange over the top, just dry brushed on, and that kind of went okay. I used my texture palette, lizardofdoom.com, to get the perfect amount on my brush before I did so. There we go, just coming off, and worked it in. But for some reason, the varnished pigment powder didn't hold it very well, and it just showed up on the texture paint that was still showing through. So most of this will be covered by the big Gundam anyway, so I decided not to worry. I also worked this pigment powder into the lower half of the miniature too. This thing has been rolling around on the surface of Mars, and the dust has kicked up all over it, all in the tank tracks and the gubbins on the lower half. I would then seal this with some varnish as well, and then I would do another layer when it was on the base to then blend them together to make it look similar. Once that was all done, I had something that looked a little bit like this, and it was ready for the varnish. It looks a little bit bright now, but I promise you the varnish does pull it back. The last thing to do was the plasma. I left this till last because I wanted it to be nice and bright and clean, like it burnt any dirt off that hot area. So I based it with white and then used Athematic blue contrast paint through the airbrush to coat it all over. The white was to give it the bright pop, the contrast is to keep the brightness of the white underneath. After that, I very roughly traced white back in the recesses, and you can see how messy it is from the front shot here. So what I would do to tidy that up is come back with the Athematic blue and hit it from that front angle where you can see the messy tops and clean that right up. Easy, nice, faded back into blue, and also not caring about overspray. This thing glows blue, so everything around it is hit by the glow. So before I go into the reveal shots now, I just want to remind you, check out the merch, lizardofdoom.com, and also comment, "I am lighting the incense and praying to the machine god," for your chance to win this Gundam Kitbash conversion, whatever you want to call it. If you own an AdMech army, this is perfect for you. It is the right size to use as a count-size dune crawler, kinda. It's on the right size base at least. And if not, it's just a kind of cool piece that's been custom made by myself and that I will post out to you. So without further ado, let's have a little look at the reveal shots. Thank you to my Patreons for supporting me. Thank you to each and every one of you. If you would like to support me on Patreon, the link is in the corner now and also down in the description below. This is a very important time for me. About a month ago, I have gone part-time in my day job to make more of this content. So if you've been watching this channel for a while and you like my kit bashes or you like some of my other content as well, then maybe consider supporting. I value each and every one of you. Thank you for helping me run this channel. Previously, I was very proud that I had not taken any of the money from the Patreon for myself, and I had spent it all on improving the channel. However, now I am part-time. You are literally feeding me. So the money that comes from the Patreon now goes to, supporting my living. This is the dream, to make this my job. Thank you everyone for helping make that a reality. Don't forget you can join the Discord, have a little chat with other Gundam and Warhammer enthusiasts. We've got a nice little community going in there and it is very friendly and welcoming, so come along and join that, and I will see you next time. Leave a like for the like gods and a comment for the algorithm throne. It is not a pile of shame, it is a pile of future fun. See you next time. Peace.